Hey guys, Magnet here with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the first impressions that I've had after playing the Legacy of the Void fan-made alpha. And as it says there, yes, the fan-made alpha can be played, and it kind of emulates the development decisions that they've made so far with where they're trying to take the game. So I'm going to show you how to do that so you can play it yourself, and also kind of the ups and downs of what I have observed and how the game feels on a general level. So I've probably played maybe a dozen Legacy of the Void games, not nearly enough to kind of stabilize how I think it's going to play out, and I think that's kind of pointless right now because it's going to change a lot anyway, but still, I feel like there's valuable things you could gain from playing it. So one thing I would definitely recommend is that if you are not impressed with the changes, definitely play this, and I think you'll quickly change your mind. It's very fun, it's very cool, but let me show you guys a couple of things, or rather, first off, I'm going to show you guys how to get a Legacy of the game Legacy of the Void game going. Legacy of the game, that's not a thing, but what I'm going to show you is the way that you can start it up. So go to a custom game, load up whatever map you want, and instead of hitting join or create game, go to this create with mod, and then up here in the search for LOTV custom. The most accurate one, and the one that's been around for the longest, is this LOTV custom unofficial fan alpha. It's made by a guy named Soul Filter, and if you just hit create game, once you find that extension mod, it will bring you into the lobby. The only downside is that it is pretty hard to find games if you don't know anybody, so you will want to find a friend and play with them, or maybe go onto the forums and ask if people want to play. There is a chat for it, but it's really impossible to find games. But yeah, this will basically put me on the map that I chose, which is King Sejong Station, and all the changes that are currently being tested in Legacy of the Void will be in here in some denomination or another. So it's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty cool. You guys should definitely check it out. So let me talk about what I've observed during my games, and I'm going to talk about the positive surprises first. The biggest and most overwhelming surprise is the game speed is crazy. It's just something that will be very hard for people to wrap their brains around once they first start playing it, because not only is the first minute or so completely eliminated from the game, it's just that the game pushes you so hard to keep doing stuff that you really don't get a second to breathe. And it's interesting because it's more exciting that way, but it's also a lot harder. So this game's going to be a harder game for sure, but I think it's going to be a lot more fun, and you're going to see distinctly different playstyles from low to high level, in the sense that I legitimately think that lower level or slower players will probably only be able to manage 2 bases at max, mining at a time, versus 3, because your main base in this fan-made alpha mines out at about 13 minutes. And that's just craziness, because your main base in a normal game doesn't mine out until probably about 18 or 19 minutes. So it definitely accelerates and starts to stack on itself. One big factor as far as splitting up high and low level players will definitely be multitasking, because not only do you need to manage a lot more bases, you need to manage different fights all around the map too, and that makes it really crazy. So I think multitasking is going to be such a central focus of how the games play out, especially longer games in this, that you're going to want to work on it and get used to it. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of left in the dust. I listed this as a positive, but almost all the bad things that I don't like right now in Heart of the Swarm are gone in this, and that means that big swarm host turtles, raven turtles, really annoying, long, boring games are totally eliminated right now. And long games in Legacy of the Void basically mean that everyone's going to be mined out, everyone's going to be scrapping for resources, and the metagame is just going to totally change from one game to the next. So I think that's really cool. A side effect from all these changes is that I think that the pro scene will start to develop tiers of players, where you can legitimately say, this guy is top tier, as opposed to right now in Heart of the Swarm, you can take somebody like Sue that made it to every single GSL finals for an entire year, and then miss the qualifier for the next one. I don't think that's going to happen, namely because it's just going to be so much about skill and about multitasking versus trying to catch your opponent off guard in Legacy of the Void. So let's talk about a few units that I was really surprised by. everyone's been complaining that Protoss didn't get enough, and I kind of agree for the most part, but also the Tempest changes are completely crazy. It makes it a totally new thing. And you might wonder, oh, you mean the spell, right? And no, that's actually not it. The reason that they are crazy right now is because they are so fast. Their movement speed is 2.75, which means that speed Hydras on creep actually can't catch these. And if you take a second to think about that and think that they still have, I think it's 15 range, and it only targets ground units, by the way, but 15 range on a ground unit, it moves faster than a speed Hydra on creep, is like, wow. These units are very, very fast, and they're super hard to deal with if you're on the other side of it. So the new Tempests are like, Tempests in Heart of the Swarm are basically saying that there are these annoying Wings of Liberty situations that we wanted to eliminate. Now it's like, hey, you guys have this totally new unit that changes the game in totally different ways. So it's definitely something I didn't expect, and it's caused a lot of problems for the other races. So the other positive surprises, this is actually not as much of a surprise, but just still an overwhelming positive, and that is that Ravagers are just so much fun. They cause micro to happen on both sides. It's just never been there before. They cause engagements to happen on both sides. It's never been there before. It more importantly kind of gives Zerg really temporary spatial control, which is something that they've basically never had against Terran. They've never really had against other Zergs, and they kind of had it against Protoss only with Swarm Host, but they kind of have a more fun and functional way to do it now. So Ravagers are serving such a great purpose right now. I really love those. And another positive surprise is that Terran is not as overpowered as I expected. Everyone that I saw the matches from BlizzCon was like, oh, Terran's so broken, blah, these new units. But actually, once I've seen them play out and people start to get used to it, they're really not that strong, almost to the point of not being strong enough. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a sec. So let's talk about the negative aspects that I saw. One negative aspect is that this game is so much different that it's going to take a long time for the game to stabilize to a point where I can make videos and say, this is what to expect from an opponent and what to expect in a game. Even right now, every single game that I would win or lose against my friends in this was because one of us just messed up or we didn't know what we were doing. And that's going to be a symptom of a lot of games for a long time, excuse me, even at the pro level. So that's going to be kind of a negative aspect, but the game's just so different, so much faster, that it's going to take me a long time to get to a point where I can start telling you guys how you can expect games to play out once it releases. Another negative aspect is I think scouting is too weak right now, so the game will get a little bit coin flippy, in the sense that if things happen so much faster, then that means all-ins are going to happen a lot faster as well. For the most part, if you play, say for most of what I played was PvZ. It was against my friend who plays Zerg, and one of the biggest surprises was that as soon as you start the game, you basically take one of your workers, you make a pylon down by your natural expand, and you go to the Zerg base, and they have a hatchery started before your probe can even get there, even if you send one basically right as the game starts. So the fact of being coin flippy will be very evident in this game, I think, for a little while, especially at the beginning. So it might not be the greatest way to start playing immediately. It'll probably be a lot of really messy builds and just losing because you weren't expecting something, so that's kind of a downside that I can see happening. As far as units, I'm really expecting the disruptors to take a while to kind of shape up into what they had envisioned, because right now the disruptors are too much either worthless or they're just way too strong. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I expected disruptors to be this new cool thing that I could kind of rely on, and it's not really the case, so I was a little bit disappointed in that. As far as Terran goes, and I mentioned this a little bit before, but I think they're probably the worst race right now, and I think it's mostly because they just don't have a very defined late game. They're just still a lot of mid game and stuff, and I didn't see any big buffs to mech that really would push them over the top. If anything, mech got just a tad worse with all the changes, especially the Raven changes. So I think that we definitely need to see a lot more out of Terran late game. Otherwise, they're just going to fall apart. They're going to get out-teched, and they're going to lose a lot of games, and it's going to be annoying. Ravagers, while I really, really love them, I think they're just too good overall. Their damage spells are the fun thing about them, but their regular attack is still really strong. They still have a lot of health. It takes a lot of effort to try and kill these things, and if they ever get in trouble, they can just lay down basically a wall of death that you're going to have to come through if you want to try and chase them. So I think right now they're probably the strongest unit in the game, and it's a double whammy where if you make a unit that everyone wants to use and they're really strong, it kind of just takes over the game. While I really like it, they're going to definitely have to be changed, and I think they're going to have to probably have a lot slower attack speed is where I would think they're going to go, and kind of tone down the damage a little bit on the blast if they're not going to tone down the cooldown. Right now they're just a little bit have too much utility, I guess I should say, but I think that'll get changed. I'm still extremely worried about the Immortal and Warp Prism stuff, because seeing this from the very beginning is that they want to have Protoss have more options for harassment, but the problem with them focusing on Immortals is that the unit's already meant to be hard to kill, and harassment that's hard to kill is extremely annoying for the enemy, and I'm just very, very worried about any of those things still standing, because either you make the Immortal worse and you make a lot of worse game situations for Protoss, or you just remove the Warp Prism changes and all of a sudden you're back to square one, you didn't accomplish anything. So those two changes especially I see really clashing a lot. Some other things that I was kind of a little bit disappointed about is that Zerglings are basically useless in the game right now. They just get countered by way too many units. I need to see them have a little bit more utility, since there's just basically every new unit that comes out kind of is just a new answer for Zerglings. So that's something that I'm a little bit disappointed about as well. And also Stasis I think is kind of low skill, in the sense that if you think about how it would work, the Stasis is basically a mine right now, and I first thought that, well, it'd probably be the reasoning that they decided to let disruptors, or rather let Ravagers destroy force fields, so you can kind of rely on that a little bit to stop attacks. But at the same time, if you put the mines out in front, what's stopping somebody from just coming up with one unit, tripping the stasis, and just ruining all your mines and running you over anyway? So I don't think that stasis is in a great spot right now, but this is something that I was really on the fence about talking about, because I think that it could eventually stabilize to be something that just prevents Protoss armies from being chased down. In the sense that if somebody's like, oh, I can kill this army, and they chase it down and then they run into a bunch of stasis mines that they couldn't see or never knew were there, then that's the only way I can see them being that useful. But still, I'm not overly excited about it right now. Let's talk about what I expect to change. I expect distinct playstyles to start to show up in the game, and by that I mean, right now, if you open a pro game of StarCraft, maybe you have some replays, or if you're watching VODs, and you don't know who's playing, it's hard to tell who it is just by watching their play. There's a handful of players you could pick out, and that's probably it. So I hope that there's going to be enough viable strategies and enough viable playstyles that you're going to start being able to look at replays and say, oh, I know who this is SOS, or I know who this is Rain. Something like that. I also expect Terran late game to change, like we were talking about before, and more specifically, I expect BCs or Thors to get some reasonable overhauls, because right now they're basically still not very attractive for Terrans to go for. I also expect the Herc and Cyclone to get more defined roles, because right now they don't really do anything that Terran didn't already have. So I can see them being focused a lot more about what's this unit supposed to fix, as opposed to this is a unit, yay, go play with it. I also expect the Infestor to get something new, because right now Infestors are basically fungal and that's it. I'm not sure what they're going to be getting. They had played around with trying to make Zerglings relevant through that, but I'd prefer them to be more of a unit that takes down big targets. Say something like a unit to counter like a Tempest or a Colossus or something. Vipers kind of already fill that role, but if they're trying to be less about pulling stuff into static defenses, then I think that'll make Vipers less important. Also, Zerg anti-air will change as well, and I really expect the change to be revolved mostly around Corruptors. Right now, Corruptors are basically you just make them because, and I feel like they're going to make them be more of a unit that you make intentionally before the other race kind of provokes you into doing so. So I'm expecting that to go in that direction as well. We talked about Warp Prisms and Immortals already. We'll kind of just gloss over that in the sense that the two of them together will cause huge problems. Separately, they're not that big of problems, but I expect them to be toned down in one way or another. Whether it's one or both, I'm not sure, but we'll expect that. We're still waiting on the Protoss early game unit. We've talked about that in other videos as well. Really no updates on that, and I don't know if I have too much more to say about that. And one last thing that I've really noticed after playing is that the disruptors are kind of not very interactive for the opponent. It's just once you see one, you just have to panic and try to run away. And that's not very fun for both sides. I think they need to be more like, either do you take the risk and try to shoot them down, or do you take the risk of just getting blown up? And I think for the most part, they're going to have to adjust the cost quite a bit on the disruptors to make them more about what the enemy decides to do to deal with them, as opposed to just giving them one option that's just running away. So I think they definitely do need to be more interactive. Let's talk about time frame moving forward with Legacy of the Void, specifically regarding what you're going to see on this channel. I'll post any development updates that come across, like I'm always going to be doing, just to talk about what they're changing, what they're thinking about, stuff like that. I'm not expecting the beta to be out until probably spring. I would say March or April is a fairly safe bet. I'm expecting the beta to be super duper long, like probably 6 months, just because the game's going to be so different. It's going to take a long time for everything to stabilize. And also, I'm not going to be planning on posting any gameplay videos until beta, because it'll be a case where you guys can play your own games and figure it out, and you'll probably know just as much as I will, in the sense that there's no way that we're going to ever stabilize the metagame for an alpha, considering it's going to change so much. But once beta starts coming out, I will post some gameplay videos and practice sessions and whatnot, just to experiment. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed at least listening to me ramble for a little while. I'm trying to get out some content for Legacy of the Void to try and keep you guys entertained and kind of keep your minds on the game as it starts to develop a little bit more, but we'll just have to wait for Blizzard to release more stuff. I'll release more stuff on this channel in the very near future about Legacy of the Void, so look out for it. And in the meantime, I guess I'll see you guys later. Take care.